The siren wailed somewhere behind him. Heat from the afternoon sun shimmered across the asphalt, and Mark Delaney felt his phone vibrate with the tone he knew too well. He was still in his truck, 4 houses from home, when the dispatch came through the radio he kept clipped to the dash. Structure fire, residential. Heavy smoke reported. Address. Mark's hand froze on the steering wheel. That was his street. That was Harbor Lane. And the number, his neighbor's house. A tight breath left him. Not panic. Just that small internal drop firefighters get when the world narrows to one point. He eased off the gas, checked the smoke column rising faintly over the trees. Gray, fast-moving. That meant interior fire already pushing. He turned the corner and the view hit hard. Smoke knifed out from the eaves of Mrs. Kellerman's place. The small blue 2-story he'd waved at for years. He pulled over, hazards flashing, scanning windows, watching patterns. The fire wasn't roaring yet, but it was building. The kind that eats a house from the inside out before anyone even steps outside to notice. He called it in anyway, voice steady. Engine 7, I'm on scene. Heavy smoke from the Bravo and Charlie sides. No occupants outside. He hated saying that last part. A memory flickered. Mrs. Kellerman on her porch last week, handing him tomatoes from the garden she kept more alive than she ever kept the house. She was 81, moved slowly, always alone except for her son who visited maybe twice a year. Mark scanned the driveway. No car. That didn't mean anything. He stepped out, boots crunching gravel, and felt the temperature shift as the smoke thickened. He didn't have gear. Not turnout pants, not gloves, nothing but the jeans and off-duty t-shirt he'd been wearing for the drive home. He backed up a few steps, instinct reminding him where the line was. Another sound broke through, glass popping somewhere upstairs. A window failed under heat. That meant extension. That meant time was running thin. A neighbor jogged toward him from across the street, phone in hand, face tight. "Mark, she inside?" "Don't know yet," he said. "Stay back. Keep everyone back." The first engine rounded the corner, lights cutting through smoke. Seeing his crew pull up on his street sent a strange ache through his chest. Pride and dread meeting in the same place. Captain Ruiz stepped down, already masking up. "You good to work?" Ruiz called. He didn't mean physically, he meant emotionally. Mark nodded once. Firefighters don't dramatize, they just move. Within seconds he was in bunker gear pulled from the rig, SCBA straps tightening around muscle memory. The mask clicked, sealing his breath into a steady rhythm. Everything else, the afternoon, the street, the fact this was feet from his own driveway, faded into operational focus. "Primary search," Ruiz said. "You and Harris take interior. Fire seems to be running the stairwell. Watch the attic, conditions are moving." The front door resisted like something alive when Mark pushed it. Smoke rolled low, coiling around his boots. The temperature wasn't blistering yet, but it was climbing. He dropped, checked the floor. Stable, for now. Inside, it smelled like old wood, dust, and something burning deeper, hotter. Zero visibility past 5 feet. Harris tapped his shoulder. Ready. They moved. Each step felt heavier, not from fear, but from familiarity. He'd been inside this house before, carrying groceries for her after a storm, fixing a loose porch rail. Now every wall he passed glowed faint orange at the seams. A faint noise drifted from upstairs. A thud, or maybe a footstep. Hard to tell under the muffled roar developing in the walls. Harris paused. "You hear that?" "Yeah," Mark said. Second floor. He swept his light across the stairwell. The entire shaft pulsed with heat. Fire was climbing fast, maybe already in the attic. They didn't have long. A brief calm settled, that odd, quiet moment before making a push, when a firefighter's mind acknowledges the risk and keeps moving anyway. Then a crack sounded overhead. Sharp, sudden. Mark looked up. A glowing line crawled across the ceiling. "Move," he said, voice steady but urgent, because something above them was shifting. And it wasn't done shifting. The crack widened. A fine spray of hot dust drifted down through the smoke, and Mark felt the temperature spike against his gear. a sharp warning bleeding through layers of turnout fabric. He and Harris backed down the hallway just as a section of ceiling flexed, sagged, and dropped a shower of burning insulation. Not full collapse, just the house clearing its throat, but it was enough to change the tempo. "Command interior," Mark said into the radio. "We've got partial failure on the first floor ceiling. Fire's running the voids, pushing to second floor for possible victim." "Copy. Watch that attic. Truck is working on vertical ventilation." A new sound cut through, the distant buzz of saws spinning up on the roof. Good. They needed that relief, but the timing would be tight. They approached the stairs again, light slicing through brown-gray smoke. The railing was warm but intact. Harris tested a tread with his boot. Solid. For now. Mark took point. Halfway up, the air changed. Hotter, drier, swirling in a way that suggested rollover threatening the upper landing. He could almost feel it licking the ceiling above like a test. He crouched low, sweeping right to left. Push slow. Watch overhead. On the landing, visibility dropped to nothing. Pure blackout. But something else floated in the mix. The faint metallic clink of something shifting deeper in the hallway. Not fire, not structure, something human. A memory hit him quick. Mrs. Kellerman's adult son, Eric. Mid-30s, quiet. Worked nights somewhere, bags always under his eyes. If he'd been visiting, maybe sleeping off a shift, he might never have smelled the smoke until it was too late. Mark swallowed once, keeping the thought tight and quiet inside him. "Search left," he said to Harris. "Bedrooms should be along this side." They crawled, sweeping with gloved hands, boots bumping into familiar shapes. A dresser, a laundry basket, picture frames still hanging but rattling in the heat. Mark's light found a doorway. He pushed inside. The room was stale with heat layering above their heads. Bedding smoldered. Smoke churned low and slow at the floor, a sign that the fire was hungry somewhere nearby. Then the floor vibrated. Not much. Just one short tremor. But houses don't usually do that unless something behind the walls is giving up. "Command interior. We've got fire under us, maybe running the joists." Before the reply came, Harris called out, "I got something." Mark pivoted, crawling toward the beam of Harris's flashlight. Clothes were scattered near the foot of a bed. Not unusual, but one shoe lay on its side with a fresh scrape across the floor beside it. Not a burn pattern. Not debris. Movement. Recently. Mark's pulse tightened behind the mask. Someone was here, could still be. A low-air alarm beeped faintly somewhere deeper in the house. Not theirs, not anyone they knew was inside. It took Mark a second to process what that meant. It wasn't an alarm. It was a carbon monoxide detector melting in the heat. Another shift rolled through the house, a deeper groan this time. Something structural, somewhere near the Charlie side. The roof crews were still cutting. He heard the rhythmic thump of boots repositioning overhead, but fire was getting ahead of them. Harris leaned close. "We pushing farther?" Mark hesitated. One of those micro moments that never reads dramatic but sits heavy. Thinking of the neighbor who'd given him tomatoes. Thinking of how the house smelled like old books every time he'd visited. Thinking of the possibility that someone inside was only a room away. "We push," he said. They backed into the hallway, swept right. The temperature climbed fast, heat rolling across their helmets. The door at the end of the hall glowed faintly, paint blistering. "Fire room," Mark said. "We need to clear these 2 bedrooms before it lights up the whole side." He opened the nearest door. Inside, the conditions worsened. Smoke pressed downward like a blanket. A faint cough of flame snapped from the corner where curtains had ignited. Then, another sound. A muffled thud. 2 beats, like someone trying to hit a wall, or knock, or move something heavy. Harris turned. "You hear that?" "Yeah," Mark said, scanning. "Other room." They crawled out, staying low, forcing breath steady. His low air gauge was fine, but his body knew this was a race. Mark reached the final door on the hallway's end, the one with blistering paint. He touched it with the back of his glove. Hot. Too hot. He pulled his arm back. "We can't open this." could flash. But the sound came again. Weak. Very weak, from the other side. A short pause settled. 2 seconds where the hallway felt still enough for Mark to hear his own breathing inside the mask. Then the floor shifted beneath them, a long, bowing flex. Harris grabbed his arm. "Mark!" The joist cracked. The crack shot through the joist like a gunshot. The floor dipped just an inch, but enough to send a pulse of instinct through Mark's spine. He threw a hand against the wall to stabilize, feeling the house shifting under him like an animal struggling to stay upright. "Back," Harris said, but another sound came before they moved. A desperate, muffled cry on the other side of the blistering door. A voice. Weak. Real. Mark swallowed. Victim confirmed. Other side of this door. The door pulsed inward once, like heat was exhaling behind it. Flames were already seaming through the cracks. Opening it full would dump conditions into the hall. Rollover, maybe immediate flashover. But leaving it closed meant leaving someone dying on the other side. That hesitation hit him. Short. Human. Mrs. Kellerman waving at him from her porch last fall. Her son coming home late, nodding quietly as he passed Mark's driveway. Ordinary moments, nothing heroic. Just people he knew on a quiet American street. "Command Interior," Mark said. "We've got a confirmed victim behind a superheated door. Conditions deteriorating. Floor compromised." Static, then Captain Ruiz's voice. "Truck is finishing the cut. You've got 60 seconds before we lose that hallway. Make your call." Mark looked at Harris. Harris didn't say a word, which meant he trusted Mark's judgment entirely. Heavy moment, heavy responsibility. Mark pointed. "We ventilate at the same time I breach. You open the nozzle wide, cool the upper layer, then sweep low. We buy ourselves 10 seconds. 10 if we're lucky," Harris said, but he was already positioning. Mark planted his shoulder against the weakening door, listening to the fire chew through whatever lay inside. The victim made another sound, small, choked, barely a breath. That was enough. "On my count, 3, 2... He drove his weight forward. The door gave instantly, not in a clean break, but a collapsing burst of flame and smoke. Harris opened the line full fog, steam exploding upward into the superheated layer. The hallway turned white, then gray, then black again. A rush of air pulled from behind them as Truck 4's saw finally punched open the roof. For a moment the fire lifted, just enough for Mark to see the shape on the floor inside the room. A man, curled near the far corner, not moving. Mark pushed through the threshold, boots sinking slightly as the floor dipped again under the damaged joists. He swept the area with his gloved hand, found the victim's shoulder, then the outline of his jaw. No helmet, no gear. Civilian. "Eric," Mark said softly, the name slipping out before he could stop it. He hooked his arms under the man's and started dragging. Eric was dead weight, unconscious or close to it, and the room's heat punched at Mark's helmet like hands trying to shove him back. Behind him, Harris kept the hose sweeping patterns across the ceiling, buying seconds, thin and fragile as glass. "Floor's going!" Harris shouted. Mark felt it, a downward roll, like the house taking one long breath. He pulled harder, dragging Eric through the collapsing doorway. The flooring creaked under his knees, then popped. They cleared the threshold just as a 2x6 failed beneath the burning bedroom. The collapse didn't drop the whole room, not yet, but fire surged through the hole, snarling upward in a roar that lifted Mark's heart rate inside the mask. "Go!" Mark yelled. They moved fast, pulling Eric down the hallway. Every step was a gamble now. Even the air felt untrustworthy. Heat hammered the ceiling, smoke thrashed sideways, chasing oxygen. Halfway to the stairs, Mark heard a sudden shift in the fire. A deeper, throatier sound. He'd heard it 1,000 times. It meant the beast was changing shape. Flashover wasn't here yet, but it had found the hallway. "Drop!" he shouted. He pulled Eric flat and covered part of him with his own body, while Harris opened the line again. Fog pattern wide. Steam burst down the hall like a wave, rolling over them in a hot breath. For half a second, everything felt suspended. Just noise and heat and the weight of another human life in his hands. Then it eased. Not safe. Not stable. but survivable. They reached the top of the stairs. Mark hooked Eric's arm over his shoulder. Harris took the legs. Together they descended, gear scraping wood, stairs vibrating under the combined weight of 3 bodies, and everything burning above them. Halfway down, the low-air alarm on Harris's SCBA chirped. "Mark, keep moving," he said. The lower floor wasn't much better. Smoke had thickened to a brown smear, drifting low with lazy menace. Flames were licking along the kitchen doorway now, pushing out onto the first-floor landing. "Command interior," Mark said. "We've got the victim. Heavy fire overhead. Need a line at the front door now." "Copy," Ruiz responded. "You've got engine 7 at the threshold. Bring him out." The front room glowed orange from reflected fire overhead. Support crews were silhouetted at the doorway, hose charged, ready to push as soon as Mark cleared. They dragged Eric the last few feet. Daylight hit Mark's mask like a slap. Cool air washed across his facepiece. They pulled Eric onto the lawn. "Medic!" someone yelled. Mark dropped to his knees beside the victim, hands already working to clear the airway. Eric was breathing, shallow, ragged, but real. For the first time since entering the house, Mark felt a breath shake loose in his chest. Not fear, not relief. Something quieter. Then the roof behind them gave a thunderous groan. Everyone on the line turned. Something big was about to go. The groan from the roof rolled across the street like distant thunder. Firefighters stiffened, lines tightened, radios chirped urgent fragments. Mark turned just in time to see the ridge line of the Kellerman house sag inward, bowing like an exhausted spine. "Back it out! Back it out!" Captain Ruiz shouted. The attack crews retreated from the front door as the structure exhaled one long, hot breath. A sheet of flame vented through the second-floor windows, shooting 20 feet into the air. Then the roof folded in on itself with a heavy, cracking sigh. Wood giving way, nails screaming loose, shingles sliding like broken scales. Mark felt the heat on his neck even from the lawn. He stayed beside Eric, who was now surrounded by medics working fast but steady. Oxygen masks sealed, lines being started, chest rising unevenly. Soot smeared across his face like war paint, the kind that doesn't wash off easy. One medic glanced up. "He's got a chance." Mark just nodded. It wasn't relief, not fully. More like pressure easing in the smallest possible increments. Behind him, the house that had stood for 50 years burned down into itself. Flames curled along the edges where walls once framed family photos and a grandfather clock that chimed 2 minutes slow. Heat shimmered up into the sky, carrying flecks of insulation and charred paper drifting like black snow. A neighbor touched Mark's arm gently, one of those tiny emotional micro-moments the job rarely allows. "Mrs. Kellerman wasn't home," she said. "She's at her daughter's. Left this morning." Mark exhaled once, slow. Good. The engine pumps hummed steady, water arcs hammering what was left of the attic space. Crews repositioned, hitting remaining hotspots. The urgency had shifted from rescue to control, the tempo quieter but still sharp. Mark walked toward the captain. Ruiz looked him over, making sure he wasn't bleeding or hiding some injury under adrenaline. "You did good," Ruiz said. "Hallway almost went before we got him out." "Almost doesn't matter, he's out." Another radio call crackled. "Command," Charlie sighed. "We've got extension into the rear porch, but it's cooling down." Ruiz acknowledged it, then let the radio hang. "Take a breather." Mark did. One step back, one long breath of cooler air leaking into his mask. He popped the seal, lifted it off, and the world felt suddenly louder without the muffled SCBA rhythm in his ears. Sirens, pump whine, the hiss of steam where water met hot lumber. Real-world sound. He looked at the house again. Through all the smoke drift, he could see the upstairs landing, or what used to be it, now a collapsed angle of blackened timber. He pictured the moment he'd dragged Eric across it, the floor bowing, threatening to go. A second later, maybe 2, and the story would have ended differently. Harris walked up beside him, pulling his mask free, sweat streaking down through soot on his cheeks. "You good?" Harris asked. "Yeah." "You hesitated up there." "Yeah," Mark admitted. For a second, Harris shrugged. Anybody would, man, it's your street. They stood there in a small, oddly peaceful pocket amid the chaos. Watching the last living pieces of a home burn down isn't dramatic. It's quiet, heavy in a way the job never really prepares you for. Mark saw the old tomato garden out back, mostly untouched, green vines still climbing their wooden stakes as if they didn't know the house was gone. He felt something tighten in his chest, but didn't let it show. A medic approached them. "We're transporting him now. He's responsive, weak but responsive." Mark nodded. "Tell him when he wakes up. Tell him he wasn't alone in there." The medic gave a soft, knowing look and headed for the ambulance. As the crews transitioned to overhaul, Mark found himself staring down his own street. The quiet line of mailboxes, the trimmed lawns, the rhythm of a neighborhood that looked unchanged from a distance. Except it wasn't. Not today. Ruiz walked over, helmet tucked under his arm. "You heading home?" "Eventually," Mark said. "You need a minute?" "Yeah." Ruiz nodded once and left him to it. Mark stepped back from the scene, letting the light wind cool the sweat drying on his neck. He watched the house settle into its final shape, a smoldering skeleton, charred beams leaning together like tired shoulders. He thought of all the shifts he'd worked, all the fires he'd seen, the thousands of calls where he walked into strangers' homes without a single emotional tie. And then this one. 4 houses from where he slept, where he grilled steaks on weekends, where he waved at neighbors carrying groceries. You don't expect the job to follow you onto your own street, but sometimes it does. He took one more breath, slow and steady, grounding himself the way old firefighters do when the noise fades and the weight hangs on their ribs. Then he turned toward home, bunker gear still warm, smoke still clinging to him. Behind him, the last of the flames died under the steady stream of hose water. Quiet, real, no victory, just a life saved, a house lost, and a neighborhood that would wake up tomorrow remembering the sound of sirens on Harbor Lane.